please go watch that video where the camera flies into the head and the head like explodes.
What? Good morning, Indy Mogulers. Ted here, and welcome back. Now, today we're heading to Steiner Studios to go talk about live projection. What is it? And can buying a cheap $80 projector really help you be a better filmmaker? Now, live projection is the process of using real video in your video, which sounds a little complicated. Mostly because that was the bad way of explaining it. Live projection is when you use footage or scenes that you shot elsewhere to mimic backgrounds or other parts of your scene without having them actually be all together in real life. And believe me, this is a technique that's actually been around forever. In fact, if you remember the opening of that 70s show, it's live projection that's actually making that background here. I know what you're thinking. It looks super bad. Don't know why I'd want to remake it, and cameras are affordable and they're lightweight now, so why can't I just jump into a car and shoot it for real? To find out more, we headed out to the Feirstein School of Cinema in the Steiner Studios lot, which is the biggest film lot in New York City.
Welcome to Feirstein.
Now this is Charles. Charles is a great guy with an amazing beard. He's also a feature filmmaker, a writer at NoFilmSchool, and a professor of cinematography at the Feirstein School of Cinema, which is a place I promised to say a bunch of times. Thank you, Feirstein, best school ever! It is also the only film school on Steiner Studios lot, which is where they film things like Venom and Miss Maisel. It's pretty incredible, so make sure you check them out. But I digress. Remember the amazing beard. This is just a small portion of our interview with Charles, but be sure to check out the full-length discussion in the podcast link below.
When you first said we wanted to build it around our tutorial, the first idea that came to me was the idea of doing it with sort of a front projection kind of setup, because it's one of those things that gets a terrible rap. I think we all picture like a terrible Saturday Night Live sketch where it's like two people and they're like pretending to ski and there's like a projection behind them, which is like funny in Saturday Night Live, but it's not what you want in your movie.
I get it. SNL can get away with live projection because, you know, it's comedy and looking a little cheesy, it looks part of the show. But how does it look when it's used in a real, serious movie? How does it look when you say give it to one of the greatest, most meticulous directors of all time?
So when you look at something like Eyes Wide Shut, that's what they were doing. It was a Scotchlight screen, the projection was dim on Tom Cruise and brighter on the screen in the background. It's not Kubrick quality.
Why do I keep seeing live projection getting used in movies?
The number one situation I recommend it for, the number one situation I've used it in my life, is for what we call poor man's process.
Now, if you don't know what the poor man's process is, here it is in a nutshell. In film, if you want to shoot a scene with two characters acting in a car, the traditional way to do this is by hooking up the whole vehicle to a process trailer, and that way the characters can act and pretend like they're driving, when in actuality they're hooked up to a trailer that's driving them downtown and around.
You have to do this because it's safer.
Yeah,
right?
You should never have an actor performing while physically driving the car. They're gonna crash. It has happened. I mean, if you haven't watched it, please go watch that video where the camera operator is holding a thing and they pop an airbag off. And like, you know, the camera flies, it's a mannequin, but flies into the head and the head like explodes. Like,
what?
Oh yeah, that's why you should never do that. So for me, I love using projection because I think it accomplishes a couple of really important things that bring the footage to life. First, it gives you just color and texture in the background.
Reason one, color and texture. Now, no, we're not talking about just throwing a projector in front of a live projection, hoping that it looks like he's in the scene, because it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. So to make sure we knew exactly how to make it work, we asked Charles to show us a live demonstration of live projection and the poor man's process. Now, because it was just us on a stage, Charles opted to use a tiny projector and also a tiny 8-inch car.
Honestly, the clip we're using, it's a standard definition projector and a standard definition video clip. You don't need to go out and get a 4K projector because it's gonna be out of focus in the background.
Is it gonna be the best looking part of your image? No, but it at least adds something instead of nothing, which is not a super convincing reason, and I'm not super convinced either. So what's reason number two?
I just had this conversation the other day with a guy who works on the bigger shows.
Yes.
And he was talking about how frustrating process trailers are because for him, he can never line up the right background with the right line of dialogue.
Reason two, better timing. Now, one of the hardest things to do in a car scene is timing the scene exactly the way you want to.
And he's like, oh yeah, you're constantly like watching the actor and you're like, talk faster, the background's about to get good, I need you to get to that line.
If you're anything like David Fincher, try multiplying that by 100 takes and you've got your entire day of filming there, if you even get it in the take. By using live projection, you can actually control the surroundings around your scene and achieve better timing.
And then the third real benefit for me is the interactivity between the crew and the video. But usually when you're doing that in like the true inky blackness, I'm driving through a cornfield way, that's all kind of random. Whereas when you've got a video projection, you can watch the stuff up there. And you're like, oh, video projection slowing, we'll do some brake lights. So when you're there and like every single electric and grip is watching the video playback together and trying to time out their things, so the car bumps when the video bumps and the light bumps, it's really fun.
Tip 3, better motivation. Now, this one is a super tricky one. Basically, what Charles is saying here is that by being able to control your surroundings, your live projection gives you any light sources or motion sources that you want to motivate something happening in your scene.
The number one way I think you need to do it is really paying attention to the interaction between what's going on back there and what's going on in the foreground. The closer you can get those, the happier you're gonna be.
This all makes sense, and these are 3 pretty solid reasons for live projection. But there is still one problem. If we're gonna go through all this effort to recreate our surroundings, and I say this not ironically, why not just fix it in post? These days, green screen is easier than ever, the tools are better, the paint, the fabric, everything's more advanced. And if I'm just replacing a background, why not just do it in the edit?
It turns out cars have lots of reflective surfaces. Even our toy car, the inside windows of the car are reflecting the world around it. All of those reflections pick up your green screen.
But with live projection, you're not using a green screen. You're using real video in a real space that's emitting real light. So if you catch reflections of that projection in your scene, what Charles is saying is that that little bit of added movement, that little bit of added texture that appears in those reflections will actually help sell the effect. It makes it look like your character is actually in that space that you're projecting. But this is just talk, and I hate talk. So, how does live projection really work when you're doing it on a full-blown real deal set? Well, we are gonna find out. Alrighty guys, so we are currently on our way over to Best Buy. We're gonna go pick up a projector so we can do some of these lighting effects that Charles is talking about. We went back to Los Angeles when I went to Best Buy to go pick up the cheapest damn projector I could find.
Do you know where I can find a projector?
That I may or may not probably return when this video is done. And then we went to go visit my friends over at Hurling Studios. First thing we did was load our car into the space and then back it off of that back wall. Since Hurling had this amazing 50-foot wide cyc, we threw up our projector behind the car and then remembered Charles's most important tip for making this work: interaction between the foreground and the background. So in this case, since the video was of a car moving through a space at night, the first thing that we did was throw up a soft light to extend and mimic our moonlight. This is a 120D and a light dome with a full CTV gel on it. Then, since this car is on city streets, we wanted to introduce a little bit of chaos into the lighting, so to accomplish this effect, we threw up 2 120Ds in the back of the car, just outside of the frame, and then set each of them to pulse at 2 different frequency settings of firework mode.
The idea isn't that we literally have fireworks in the background.
No, no.
It's that it's just some random light that we're adding in, a little chaos.
Next, since this car should be moving through the city, the next thing that we did was add 2 panning lights. Both 120Ds, one with an extra blue push on it, and then another with a sodium vapor gel on it. Then to mimic movement and the color of streetlights whizzing by in the distance, we had 2 operators moving the lights from one end to the other. The key, of course, making sure that the lights only moved in one direction, forwards, to match up and interact with that background that is also moving forwards. We also thought it would be realistic for the vehicle to stop every once in a while, say at a traffic light or a red brake light. So we used a little bit of timing plus the dimming of a red gelled LS1 panel to mimic a brake light, adding even more interaction between our foreground and our background. And then finally, for the front windshield of the car, we wanted to do something special, something that showed how live projection can look even better than CGI. So to do this, we whipped out our second projector that I actually bought a couple of days ago. We shot the second projector right above the windshield of the car into an ultra bounce, which is basically a super reflective white fabric that film people use. You don't need it if you don't have it. You could use a white sheet or a cardboard sheet if you want to go super indie. And for the image, we went ahead and just vertically flipped that image that we had in the background and played this video in reverse.
And then we also need somebody to shake the car, which is gonna be me. I'm gonna shake the car. All right, let's give this a take. Let's see how it goes.
coming up to a stop sign in 3, 2, 1. That totally sounds. Now, this was shot on a red helium in 8K with Leica Summilux lenses, and it looks pretty damn okay. Obviously, right? Well, actually, I lied. This was not shot on the red. This was actually shot on the Canon 6D, a vlog camera that is about $1,000. The point that I'm trying to make here is that with good lighting, you can completely transform even an average image. So for all of you guys out there that think that the camera makes the image, you know who you are. Here's the red helium, and here's the Canon 6D. And yes, while the helium obviously looks much better, the 6D is definitely usable. Now, here's this technique again, this time with me bringing out my motorcycle into the exact same lighting, and this time with adding just a little bit of camera movement to help sell and bring the scene to life. Now all we need to do is add a little bit of crazy motorcycle and city sound effects, maybe a little bit of score, and bang! Now, does this live projection look as good as the real thing? Like when, say, crazy stuntmen or masterclass VFX guys do it? Of course not, but this scene does look pretty good. You can absolutely use this technique to make a movie, and if you need to make a scene like this, the money saved by using live projection may just save your film. And just in case you're wondering if this technique will soon become outdated, here is me asking that question to Charles himself.
How long do you think live projection will be around for?
My suspicion is when I'm 84 and doing an all New York driving movie, we will still live project the background.
Still live projection.
Because it's just one of those things of like, every production you are always balancing like time, money, and quality.
And likewise, actually, to add on to that point, projectors are getting brighter. You see crispy projectors with better resolution. So all those problems that you had before of the back projections in that 70s show, or an eyes wide shut of the projector looking a little soft, you're not getting that as much anymore. So you think it's more likely that live projection is getting better and that we're probably going to use it, maybe even more, frankly, it's possible.
The only thing that might take this out of my hands is like if Waymo does like an automated self-driving process trailer that like comes with its own self-driving cops and it's very affordable. Robots are the only thing that will pry this out of my hands.
Yes, absolutely. All hail Mr. Zuck.
So there you have it. Live projection has been around and probably will be around for a pretty long time to come. Is owning an $80 projector gonna help you make better films? Not necessarily, but very possibly yes, if you know how to use it and build that interaction between your foreground and your background. Finally, if you like this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you do. Also, be sure to check out the full-length discussion with Charles in the podcast link below.
How do you do a post house on Indy features? And I was like, you don't.
Make sure you check out our next episode when we go meet up with Chris from YC Imaging to learn how to make a music video with no budget, no time, and literally watch us give it a shot as well. I'm Ted from Indy Mogul, and we will catch you guys in the next one.